And call the meeting to order. Today is today is November 30th, 2021. This is the Executive Committee meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the last minutes? Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Thank you, Ms. Daly. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as submitted? Before I call that question, we have two members on the phone. Could I get permission to get them in the meeting? I got one from Mr. Rosenbaum and two from Mr. Fennell. Also, State's Attorney Jennifer is on the phone, FYI. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of permitting the two phone members, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That would be unanimous. Now back to the motion that's on the floor to adopt the minutes. All those in favor? Aye. I didn't even say what to say. You're so well trained. Nice job, Jim. Any opposed?
Rachel Relaford. Left.
Uh-oh. All right. That's probably a small accident. Let me just say, in my absence, I appreciate Mr. Fennell. As you can see, the government is nicely structured so that one key component or one component can be out of pocket for a little bit of time, and the machine keeps rolling along. So thank you, Jim.
Rachel Relaford. Joined.
So we're going to count her still in. All right. Now, informational items. I'll lead with Mr. Sorrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first bullet today is an update for the committee on Distillery Labs and Central Illinois Living Laboratory. These are two economic development programs that we invest in, and we've got a team here from Hanson Professional Services, who is the consultant for the Central Illinois Living Laboratory project. They've got a slide deck that they're going to walk through, so I ask Kurt to come on up to the podium, and he's going to walk through that slide deck for you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kurt Byler-Bresky from Hanson Professional Services. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and County Board, for having us in today to talk about this. Our goal today is to go through an initiative that that you all helped fund and that we've been working on together at Distillery Labs. And we had brought to you previously, I think it was probably sometime in the late to midsummer where we came and talked about it originally. So we're going to give you an update of all the work that we've done and where some of the initiatives and things are heading. So just as a recap from that previous meeting, to start with, what is Distillery Labs going to be, and what is it, hopefully, what is it working towards? And it's basically a startup hub for entrepreneurs and corporate innovation. And it's going to be a place that we can spur economic growth here within the Peoria region. And its mission is really to launch and grow companies in our region, attract them here, get them to stay here, get them to become members of our community, but also to foster that within our own community, with our own and do it in a very diverse and open and welcoming way. So that really goes to the next slide of what the value statements are. We want to do all of this and to get a pathway to success for new companies through innovation and technology and knowledge and leadership, but do it in a value-centric way towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, and have it be welcoming, accessible, community-minded. So there's actually a civic part of this too, is to improve some civic innovation activities around, maybe better services or better ways that more efficiencies can be grabbed by government agencies. So from there, moving forward, like who are the partner organizations right now to start with? I put the units of government that are supporting this through some of the funding outside of, not including the state, but just the regional ones, the local ones. Put those up there at the top of the list. You can see them. And then from there, you have OSF, who's a major funder for Distillery Labs, as well as the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council, which I believe the county supports, the Peoria Innovation Alliance. And then in that same row is actually a G-Beta, which is it's an incubator and accelerator program that Generator runs that has been brought to Distillery Labs. Is housed there, is actually going through its first cohort. It's 5 startups from the local community that they're trying to mentor and move through to profitable growth for those companies. And then below that are I would call them the research or the educational institutions of higher learning that are support of this, that really will start to provide some of the talent and some of the space where and some of the ideas that would come out of that and move through that space. So we have the ones to the, I would say, to the left are from the University of Illinois or University of Illinois System supported, the Illinois Innovation Network, the system, and the Discovery Partners Institute, which is actually one of the parts, or I guess it's a sister organization maybe to the Illinois Innovation Network. On the right-hand side are our local folks, the Illinois Central College, which is providing some of the space in the building for Distillery Labs, as well as Bradley University has been a huge partner in trying to move this forward and work through the different initiatives that are there. So what is the Illinois Innovation Network, which is what Distillery Labs is actually a part of? It's a system of hubs throughout the state that are mostly located at land grant or public institutions, or I should say all located at public institutions, and some of them being land grant ones. Distillery Labs is unique in that sense, where it's the only accelerator incubator in the system that's not tied to one of those. So it's much more real world based, much more about economic growth and activity as opposed to research and development and those kinds of activities. So Distillery Labs, in its very first initiative, this is starting to get to the meat of why we're here to talk, because this is the work that we've been doing, is the Centralized Living Laboratory. It's what we've coined it for now. Maybe when there's a fancy marketing person at Distillery Labs, they'll come up with something a little more inventive. But basically, if you've heard of smart and connected communities, you've maybe heard the mayor of Peoria talk about that. But what Distillery Labs, or what Central Illinois Living Lab, or CIL, is a real-world testing environment to advance those types of technology, the use of those technologies, the company, maybe help the companies along that are doing those things and create the business models, because this is all new to everyone, frankly. And there's quite a few barriers to entry that have been seen in the market that really just make it hard for small companies or even some corporate institutions to want to invest in them, because there's they're expensive, or they don't have access to public rights of way, or there's just a lot of things that can trip you up and keep you from being able to do that. So the one point here, though, that's important to say is that this is the first initiative of Distillery Labs, and it's what Distillery Labs actually is labs within a lab. So if you see this little Post-it note that's up here on the screen, you can see the one little slice of the pie there. So that on the pyramid, I guess it would be, that's Distillery Labs, and the idea is that there'll be other parts of these. So within, sorry, talk with my hands, but within the lab itself, Distillery Labs itself, you could have a makerspace for a food kitchen for that kind of entrepreneurship. You could have a 3D printing facility, different things, and even within the Central Illinois Living Lab, Bradley's talking about a smart connected campus and different. There just could be different pathways that this could take, and it would continually be iterative and grow on of itself with its own momentum. So CIL and Distillery Labs will be built on partnerships and collaborations across industries, across different types of organizations, public, private, collaborations, all of those different kinds of things. So this is actually a list of all the different institutions and organizations that we've been talking to. They're pretty varied, and some of them are very local. There's the county, OSF, IDOT helped fund our grant, the city helped fund it too, and it's a lot of their rights of way that this will be taking place in. But then on some of the communication side, you can see local companies like i3, or large national, multinational companies like T-Mobile and Verizon and Google Cloud, who would be providing some of the communications or data access for folks. So it just kind of varies. Also with smart and connected communities, you hear a lot of what they're doing is around energy conservation, sustainability, electrification of vehicles, those kinds of things. So companies like Duke Energy and Ameren are very interested. On the institutional side, through some of the relationships that staff members at GPECC or at Hanson or even other folks on our committees have, we've already engaged folks from the Juvenile system, MIT and Stanford, as well as Bradley. Just locally, Bradley's been really interested. So you can see there's just a real interest in a real wide variety of folks. And it's just not on technology things, because it's a placemaking thing. So within the University of Illinois system, people from their urban planning department, from the civil engineering department that maybe there's not some tech related, those kinds of folks are interested as well. So it's a very interesting and diverse mix of ideas and perspectives. So the work that we've been doing is really to identify and then develop some foundational things to really get rid of those barriers that we were talking about. We want to provide, ways that we can remove those barriers, but basically give tools to entrepreneurs and to corporate folks to grow their businesses within the lab and then stay in Peoria and become members of our community. The other part, through a lot of our research on those foundational items, what we've seen through that have been successful, and there are a few other of these kinds of installations throughout the country, not many, and most of them in communities much larger than ours, which actually, what's been shown is that it's hard for things to scale to places smaller than, say, like Columbus, Ohio, where one of these larger installations is going, or is ongoing, but also in Phoenix. But the idea is that every one of the experiments that we would do would have some sort of way to provide a better service or a better experience through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and do it in really the bullet points that you see on the bottom of that slide. So that's really one of our goals, and it's, having better mobility and accessibility to services or to goods or to the economic opportunities, or even to, for that matter, healthcare and other services. And then how that plays in with economic opportunity, having better access to jobs or public safety, environmental sustainability. So you probably heard about the city's CSO efforts. What kind of innovation and things need to go on in and along that, and data that could be collected and analyzed, as well as I mentioned healthcare and well-being. So a example that we like to talk about on our team actually is in Columbus, Ohio. One of they tried lots of different experiments, but one of the most very successful ones is where they began using telehealth and connected and autonomous vehicles to take folks from a disadvantaged neighborhood into their prenatal care appointments. So those kinds of things really begin to move the needle and provide better outcomes. And if you do it through those kinds of scenarios, it seems that has made these programs the most successful. So that's what we're going to ensure is a part of this entire mission and this entire part, or in this entire side of the ledger. SIL is also aligned with the Illinois Department of Transportation and their initiatives around, how to provide some of that better mobility and access, and doing it for economic growth, livability, mobility, and resiliency, and just stewardship, taking better care of what we have. That's partly because the state is such a big supporter of our work, but also just of the Discovery Partners Institute and the Illinois Innovation Network. All these things, with our limited resources, if we can align them all, we can really start to grow momentum and really make the most of what we have and what we're doing. So I talked a little bit about this alignment. We also, if one of the things on there is to provide that better access and the economic opportunity. But the last piece is you hear a lot of times is that we wanted to align with the National Science Foundation, and that's partly for the U of I system. It's partly for grant opportunities that are available. But it's also partly for our activities that I just explained through, like, providing better access and mobility and those things. Because in the media, you hear a lot about smart cities, and what we really want to be is a smart and connected community. We want to be a connected community, and that's the nomenclature within the National Science Foundation. So it opens up those different opportunities, but smart city doesn't particularly align with a lot of our goals and a lot of the goals of our organizations that are supporting. But that smart and connected part, and that we're all one community, that we're all working together and we're connected to each other in whatever way possible, is really what the National Science Foundation is researching, and it's what we're trying to achieve with these initiatives. We've established an advisory group. It's got basically a lot of the folks from that big jumbled up slide with all the different logos. It's got folks from all those different walks of life. It's used as a sounding board, and it's really to start critiquing and almost act maybe a little bit like a board of directors as a way to bring in different experiences and different questions. But then there'll be little subgroups made out of that working advisory group so that we all know what each other's doing, but we're able to go forward. So there's about 20 folks right now on that group, and we've met one time and provided some information. We've had some one-on-ones and really started to discuss some of the different initiatives and things that should be ongoing. So our work specifically, since we looked at how the organization of the group would be, but our work specifically really is to go into an area of Peoria, the heart of Peoria, which is defined as that blue area on that map, and then and then within the public rights-of-way, really on the red and yellow piece. So it encompasses about 7.75 miles, and it starts at the corner of, we'll start at the corner of Main and Adams and go up Main Street, up the hill, and then all across to Western, and then down Western, and back up Adams, and that's really the loop. And then there's some transecting sections, which is be from the intersection at Main and University, down MacArthur, down to Adams, and then across the community there on John Gwynn and in that area. So that's what we're looking at, and it's mostly rights of way that are owned by the city of Peoria. There's a little bit owned by IDOT. So we're working with the city a lot on those spaces, and actually talking to IDOT a little bit too. But since most of it's the city, we wanted to start there. So what have we done to date? We've mapped the loop, which you just saw. We've actually mapped, we defined it, we put it together. We mapped all the assets within that area or right next to that area. So really, we start foundational or institutional locations, things like Bradley, things like elementary schools, the library, the courthouse, just lots of different things to go look at. We actually looked at the infrastructure assets so that we could start to see what was actually there, what we could take advantage of that was already working, and then started to graphically depict themes in different districts and different areas so that we could have projects or experiments that would be taking place. We were looking at, because of the area and our focus on DEI, we're looking at demographic and socioeconomic information, put that all together, and then started conducting a lot of the overlap and the different alignments that we already talked about and seeing where that worked. Lastly, the last 4 items here are really start to begin what I guess in consulting we'd call business development activities, or trying to bring people into the lab, discussing it with them, getting the word out, developing a playbook so it can scale out, so that you can even take it into maybe different verticals within Distillery Labs, because they have 2 other pillars that maybe could have access to this, that would want to use it, and then defining those elements and some potential experiments that could take place. So what are those elements?
Before you move on, you've used a little corporate jargon over there. DEI, I assume, means
DEI or DPI? I'm sorry, I didn't
what?
hear you.
DEI, diversity.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay, and then what is verticals? What does that mean?
So within Distillery Labs, there's pillars or there's verticals of subject matter areas where they're trying to encourage economic activity or economic growth. So Distillery Labs, smart and connected communities or smart mobility, those kinds of things are all in one vertical within Distillery Labs. That's part of the focus. The other 2, I believe, are like ag tech and food and wellness kind of go together, and then the other one is just a health and well-being type vertical.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. The next, on the foundational element side, I've mentioned some of these already. Really, because of all the rights of way that we're looking to do this and do this in public space, we need to talk with the city of Peoria and eventually IDOT about how these entrepreneurs and corporate folks be able to do their innovation work and do it in public rights of way and have that, and are going to be creating data that they would share out. So we've submitted a draft agreement to the city, and the city corporate council is going through that right now. We're in discussions with several, as you saw from the previous slide, we're in discussions with several different national and international and regional communications companies to select a network, a 5G type communications network, or a lower band that just sends small bits of information type network. And then you saw Google Cloud on there, and there's a couple other folks that are, and generally speaking, county staff and consultants and others that do some of this work. It's geospatially related, so we could maybe do them in ArcGIS, but we're looking at ways to create an open data platform so that folks that are in Distillery Labs becomes almost like a library of data, so that these innovators and entrepreneurs and others can come and access that data directly through their membership within Distillery Labs. And the last item there is a lot of this could take place, and maybe, and you never know what's going to happen if you have an asset like a 3D digital twin of the rights of way. So we've gotten some proposals to see what that would cost us, because we're working on a budget and we're trying to figure it out. But it would be a big asset for the lab to have, but it's also something that's maybe a little bit further out on the wish list. Our schedule and our planning milestones, we started out in mid to late spring. and started doing planning. We in the late summer, we began our advisory group meetings. We had done some of our research and figured that out and where we wanted to go. In the fall, we started doing the BD activities or the business development activities, or just begin talking to a lot of these larger companies that are that have very similar initiatives and that are aligned and maybe want to come in and be a part of Distillery Labs. October, we submitted that draft right-of-way access and data sharing agreement to City Corporate Council. And from there, our schedule is what we have in here, is that we're hoping to finalize that agreement by the end of the year. So, and then the next part is that we're hoping to select a communications network and a partner, a corporate partner as a part of that by the end of January, and be able to make that announcement in that time frame. We're from that perspective to go on to start thinking about those foundational elements, the open data platform that was number 3 on there. End of February, we're hoping that those discussions can conclude, and that we'd have an agreement with someone to provide those services. And then in the spring, we have within our work with what the county's cost sharing with IDOT and the city, we actually have the ability to deploy sensors out into the rights of way. So we're hoping to put that out for bid, get those sensors deployed, and in the summertime begin collecting and analyze data that can be then. That data can also be put into the beginning parts of that library of data that folks can use. So with that, we do have the rest of our teams here. So any questions that you may have, I can't answer them. They probably can. And then you can contact us at any point in time. I have Philip Lockwood and Anthony Corso from Hanson here with me as well.
Thank you. Members, questions, comments? How about some praise for these guys? Thank you. I think you've really onto something there, Ms. Bryant.
One question here.
I think this is a great idea. Great, not just idea, but a great plan you guys have for our city, our community. I just had a question about how does Distillery Labs differ or interact with the Minority Business Center we have here? Do they interact at all, or do they compare?
So they do interact,
okay.
And actually, the Minority Business Center would be a member of, or a support organization to Distillery Labs. And if you didn't know that the Minority Business support was there, you could come to Distillery Labs, and hopefully one of the mentors or some of the people that would be there would be able to point you in that direction that you could do that. So Distillery Labs is a bit of a place for all people to kind of come together and collide in a way that's productive, and really start to make those connections so that you know that those services and that support is available.
Thank you, Brandy. Dr. Blair.
I want to thank you for your presentation today. It's always great to see so many exciting things. Kurt is on our Peoria County Advisory Group for Entrepreneurship and Small Business, and we are starting to really get moving on that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Blair. Others? Mr. Dillon.
This may not be a question for you, Kurt, but what's the time frame to replace the executive director at Distillery Labs?
I believe he gave 4 months notice, so he'd be there until I believe somewhere around the March, and they've already posted the position and hopefully are taking resumes.
Thank you. Others? We look forward to your next report. Anybody on the phone? Anybody on the phone have any questions?
Rob Bruno.
Left.
Well,
Rob was muted and accidentally hung up. Mr. Chairman, if there's no other comments or questions from the members, just wanted to bring to the committee's attention that actually later this week I'll be traveling to the Atlanta metro area for a National Association of Counties meeting, and while I'm there, during some downtime in the meeting schedule, I'm actually going to go to suburban Peachtree Corners, Georgia, where
Joined.
where one of the technology partners is partnered with local stakeholders there to create something similar to what we're doing with the Loop, and they're much more further along than we are. So this is a little bit of a scouting and resource gathering investigation that I've been able to build into my schedule while I'm down there, that I'll be reporting back to the steering committee, of which I'm a member, and then based on that information and other conversations we're having with the folks in Georgia, a larger group may be looking to make a more detailed visit at some point in the future.
Thank you. Will you be flying out of Peoria?
Yes, I will.
I bet you won't be flying on Delta.
No, but it was actually more cost effective to fly a competitor from our own hometown airport as opposed to driving and flying Delta from Sierra over in Bloomington.
I'm just making the point that Delta's loss is at someone's gain. I'm still bitter. I got a lot of points on Delta. Go ahead, Dr. Blair.
Scott, can you make sure that we get a copy of this presentation?
Yes, I've actually already forwarded it, the email to Nancy and Jan to put into this week's weekly update.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Are we done here? Mr. Renaud, were you going to ask a question, or you just accidentally cut yourself off?
I was just going to say I didn't have a question, and then I accidentally hung up.
Okay. All right. So let's see.
Thank you.
Continuing down the informational items, I note in the report submitted by the county auditor, as well as some ongoing questions about some offers of help with tech. I'd like to get mentioned here in today's meeting. Mr. Fennell and Mr. Sorrell both have some comments regarding the efforts being made.
Thank you. In her comments, she said that she was unable to audit the 656 checks totaling $4,461,072.67. I've reached out to her twice in the last couple months to all of the pertinent data is on our Panamation, and if she refused in both times to talk to us about it so we could show her or work with her on how to get that information. All the pertinent information is there available to do the audits that she wants to do, and she never responded to either time. The other thing, since it's been going to the Finance Committee, I'd like to have, if the board would allow it, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have our Assistant CFO give a response on some of the initiatives that the Finance Department has noted for improvements while they're doing this.
The rest of the committee members okay with a little update on the technical tactics of finance? Julie, I thought your last name was going to be more complicated than the first last name you were given in life, but I got it right. Scott's helped me, so welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Mr. Chairman. Since we have taken the financial or auditing of the accounts payable since September, each check, either Randy or myself does go through all the checks or all the requests and ensure that what has been submitted is good to go. A couple of the exceptions that we have in the report, just to bring to your attention, this is really high level and really room for improvement, not necessarily something to raise any red flags. But there's 4 areas. One is to increase the consistency with expense classification between commodities and contractual. The second one would be defining and implementing a policy for prepaid expenses. The third would be to reduce the payment of recurring vendor expenses that are paid on the purchasing cards that could actually be paid by check, because we do that by check in other departments. And then the last one would be to increase the use of requisitions for purchases over $5,000, and that is mainly to make sure that the requirement for prevailing wage is communicated to the vendor for any public works project. So those are the areas that we have identified for improvement county-wide.
Thank you. Members of the committee, Mr. Fell.
Yeah, maybe Julie can also address this. I asked for exceptions of, and I want a very high level. I don't want anybody's name named. It's just so that we don't have repeat offenders, and if we could review the data that's missing or whatever and keep track of who it was, so that maybe a quarterly basis we would review it, and if more training is required, that we could do that.
That sounds like a great idea.
And one other comment I would like to make, that the auditor's report has been consistent throughout. When all the checks were going through her office and when they're not going through her office. The report that we get as a board is basically the same report we've gotten all along. So if there was never any exception, so I've asked her about that before. But my question going through this is, if they need more information or whatever to do this audit, because it's all out, the information's all out there on Panamation, and when we ran it through the finance department versus her numbers, they basically are the same. So it's not a numbers question, it's a question of is she getting the right information? She's certainly qualified to do it, and she's authorized to go and get the information. So if there's training or any help or whatever is necessary, we'd certainly extend that.
So she's permitted to use Panamation, our
That's
general
correct.
accounting system for the county.
Yes.
Do you want Mr. Sorrell to comment on
Yeah,
any
that'd be
part of
fine.
your
Mhm.
report, Jim?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Scott?
Sure. Happy to, Mr. Chairman, just to provide a little bit of expansion to Vice Chairman Fennell's remarks. And really specifically, if those committee members that were here last month recall after the auditor delivered her report and made her remarks, Vice Chairman Fennell, who was presiding over the meeting, specifically asked the administration to look into the matter. We did do that, and in Panamation's test environment, we replicated the security clearance that the auditor currently has and has had, and then attempted to perform those audits in that test environment. We do it in the test environment because we can replicate the live database without actually touching the live database, and which is the purpose of having a test environment. So we did that. We were able to access all the records, all the invoices, and all the documentation that the auditor has previously sought when doing her audits in prior months, prior to last month. And so that validated that the access does exist. It validated that the documentation is available to the auditor in her office through Pentamation. And then at Vice Chairman Fennell's request also, we communicated to the auditor directly in requesting her to give her an opportunity to meet with Vice Chairman Fennell and a member of the finance team to walk through this information. The offer also included a renewed offer to get any additional or remediation training in how to use Pentamation, as we've offered that before, and I know there has been training performed in the past, but if there's always a need for a refresher, we're happy to offer that. And there has been no response to that communication to the auditor, so we have not been able to speak with her regarding that, and we've not been able to provide any training that would have been able to be offered. So we feel highly confident that the access and the documentation that's available in the software is available to the auditor. Happy to answer any questions.
I'm here representing the auditor's office. Jessica's under the weather today.
Yeah,
So
so let me
anything that I
just
can
time
answer,
out. This isn't a
I'm
free,
willing to do that.
it's not a free forum, ma'am. You have,
No, I
you
understand
have
that.
to be recognized by the
Questions about
chairperson.
The auditor's office or comments, and I wanted to make sure.
Again, ma'am, you need to be recognized by the chair to speak, so, no, ma'am, not at this moment. it would have been helpful if you would have said something to us before we got started, then I would have a chance to
I
recognize
was
you.
going by the agenda, and this is not.
So, Scott, the completion of your report there, no other open issues?
No, the communication was sent directly to the auditor herself, and we await any response.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we need to hear from a representative of the auditor's office since she doesn't speak for the auditor. It would be unhelpful information, but thank you for offering. All right, next. Any other questions on this topic? All right, moving down the list. We've got any other info on those loan reports, or are we going to take it under the loan subordination agreement?
Really, the only loan report will be related to the resolution, Mr. Chairman. Headington Oaks financials we heard in the previous committee, but I'm sure Paul's happy to go over them again if you would like. And then finally on Springdale, Ms. Pastucha has convened a work group because we are getting into the window where this body, the park board, and the city council are going to have to make a decision as to whether or not the intergovernmental agreement is going to be renewed or not. That intergovernmental agreement expires later next year, but there is a provision that we need to act upon in, I believe it's late first quarter, early second quarter of next year related to that IGA. So Ms. Pastuch has convened a work group that I participate in, along with the city manager and the executive director of the Park District and the executive director of the Management Authority. And I think it's our goal to bring forward a recommendation to the three policymaking bodies here in first quarter so that you can start to weigh that decision-making process for that policy.
Questions? Seeing none, I'll continue moving right along. I know we've got a long agenda in our next meeting, so I'll try to finish this one up. Could I get a motion to put the loan subordination agreement on the floor, please? Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Thank you, Dr. Blair. Mr. Sorrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is in relationship to the one active loan we are currently servicing, which is Mitchell Holding LLC. Doing business as R.A. Hare Racing. They are a racing component or equipment wholesaler. They previously were located on Route 91 next to the Hare Nursery, but when this loan agreement was originally approved by the county board 8.5, 9 years ago, they built a new building in a business park in Kickapoo. What they're doing here is they are refinancing their private debt, and we currently have a second position on the original private debt. The approval of this will maintain our second position on the refinancing of their private debt. They have roughly, I think, 14 or 15 months left on our loan. The final payment is a balloon, so the total owed in principal right now is approximately $150,000.
So did we ever ask them just to throw that into the loan with Morton Community Bank?
We did, and they're actually taking on additional debt for an expansion with Morton Community Bank.
That's what it looks like.
And we, working with the state's attorney's office, and Jenny, please either correct or add to anything that I'm about to say. We actually requested that they just, as part of the refinancing, pay off our loan. They came back and actually wanted us to take a second position behind not only their existing debt, but the new debt that they were going to be incurring. And we said, that's not acceptable. We need to maintain our current position at worst. They chose, for whatever their business reasons were, to not work into their refinancing the outstanding principal of our loan. Jane, did I miss anything?
No, that summarizes it. And yeah, we had those conversations with such large loan amounts. why not just pay off the debt owed to us at this point. I think they had already structured this refinance of a different lender's debt. I think in the new debt that they want to take on when they start this next phase, I think that we'll definitely have the opportunity for payoff at that point. That's the sense I get for the next phase, and the sense I got for why we weren't included in this refi.
Well, if I was a betting man, I would say that the next county board is going to be dealing with a request to refi the balloon, which is what they've done at least once, maybe twice, since this loan was originally organized for their benefit. When I read the briefing memo, I thought that's an awful lot of debt to have not just wiped us out. So if 14 or 15 months is the end of the loan, they'll be making payments. I don't know how much of the principal they'll retire, but we'll still be staring at, I'm just not betting a paycheck, but another refi. So I can kind of live with that. I just know this is this is a pretty strong slope on the amount of debt they're accumulating here, and I want to point it out to the committee before we vote on it, because I like to do that. Gives me great pleasure. Comments now from you all. It's your turn. I've had mine. Mr. Ricker.
I guess, and I appreciate the additional detail around it, because I read through this multiple times and didn't pick up some of these key pieces. Do we have an option to decline the ask in this as far as their refi and putting us in second position, or is that not an option on our side?
I would think that we do. Go ahead, Jenny.
Yes, you can certainly decline. Right now, they have the Principal State Bank loan that they're trying to refinance. Then there's our loan. We did subordinate to that Principal State Bank loan, so then we're in second position. Then Mitchell took out additional debt with Morton Community Bank this spring, and to the tune of $1 million, which is going to be released, which is strange to me, but that's going to be released, and then they're going to simply refinance the Principal State Bank loan. There's nothing at all obligating us to play ball. Usually lenders or investors take, second or third positions because it's good for the viability of the debtor. If we wanted to ask them to show why this is necessary, why they need to refinance this, to kind of prove to us that it's worth the risk to us, and we could certainly do that. Right now, it's basically keeping the status quo. You're already in second position. You already did subordinate to the Principal State Bank loan, and that's the one being refied. So right now, it's just the status quo. But yeah, you certainly don't have to do it.
Other questions for Mr. Ricker?
I'll just kind of conclude that question with, I would need more information as one board member to understand if we, as a board, decided to decline this proposal, what are the steps that follow it? And I don't want to get into that level of detail here because it's probably more complicated than we have time for, but it might be something in the future to look at. What are the options and the technical and the kind of the key level challenges that the state's attorney would put in front of us?
So, Scott, do you think that this is super time sensitive?
I was just contemplating that myself, Mr. Chairman. Maybe there's a value in asking for a substitute motion to defer for a month to give us the opportunity to answer some of these questions for you and to come back with some more information.
We've got another loan out in my district, and I remember they also refinanced the whole balloon. And that's no way to retire debt, you know, is to have balloons come up. But both that loanee, debtor, and this debtor have paid their bills, paid them on time. They've got an excellent record with us. It's just that this suddenly went from 1 comma to 2 commas. The amount of money we're going behind. So I would accept a friendly amendment unless the rest of you want to push this through. I'm kind of 6 1/2 dozen the other on it. Is that a motion to defer it 1 month to get see if we can get a better deal? Does anybody want to support that?
I'll second that.
Mr. Fennell? If I remember how to do that, yeah, that would require a friendly second or to withdraw too. Thank you. Who was the seconder? Was it you, Dr. Blair? Was it me? Thank you. So a substitute motion, is that what we're calling this? Is that the correct way, Jenny? A substitute motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that directed to me?
All right, so I got Ms. Daly.
Are you guys good?
Yes. I got Ms. Daly on the primary and Mr. Fennell on the secondary. All those in favor of deferring it to get a better understanding or a better deal, please say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you guys on the phone, you folks on the phone. That would be unanimous. All right, so we'd be at informational items. I'm going to this time do something I'd never do correctly and actually take them in the exact order they're in my packet. County operations, Mr. Renaud. You're going to do his? Okay.
Yes. We have 3 resolutions we're bringing forward. One is for, it's on, you can't hear me? We have 3 resolutions. The first is to accept PCAP's award from Walmart of $1,750. This is to reduce euthanasia and increase adoptions at the animal shelter. The second resolution is again PCAPs. This is to transfer $45,000 from this year's budget, which was designated to purchase an animal control vehicle, and to transfer that into FY22 because, as I'm sure you all know, the availability of vehicles right now is not good. The third resolution is to ask the administration to execute an agreement for a premium for excess insurance for risk management. So I'm sure you all know we're self-insured. This insurance then is what we have that would kick in when we get to very high claims. And it's an increase of 9.5% from last year, but it's with a different company. And so in looking over all the bids, the recommendation is that we take this bid for the premium of $990,017. And those are our 3 resolutions.
Whew, that was a mouthful, Linda. And I was first thinking you were talking about risk management excess for PCAPs. Now I realize you're talking about for the county of Peoria. So.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. No, I just had blended them in my mind as if they were associated, all 3 of them. Mr. Sorrell, how does that compare to like our prior period delta?
So it is, I think, as Ms. Daly alluded to, it's over a 9% increase. The cause of that increase is the carrier that we have in place for the current fiscal year that'll expire on December 31st. tried to undercut the industry, and we got a really good deal this year. So much so that they're not writing policies going forward.
Yep, I know that. I know that happens. Okay, I understand. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Miss Linda. Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you back.
Thank you. It's good to be back, Phil.
We had 3 resolutions in infrastructure. The first 2 dealt with our farmland that we own. The first one was, of course, the area off of Maxwell Road, which we've had for numerous years, and that's 155 acres. We had 6 bids on that piece of property, and we took the highest. I know you usually say, well, we always take the lowest bid, but we want the highest on this particular situation. And a Richard Slane from pardon me, not Slane, I'm trying to think of it, Shane. Yeah, Richard Shane. He's from Brimfield, and he gave us the highest bid, and it was $321, and we had been getting $307 on that piece of farmland before. The second one of the resolutions that had to do with the farmland was in an area that we actually had acquired just a few years ago, and that was in the area of Edwards, and that's 20.5 acres. And we had 2 bidders on that piece of property, and the highest bid was by Brian Windish, and we had been getting $150 on that piece of property, and his high bid was $210. So we came out very well, we think, on the 2 pieces of farmland that we own. The third one had to do with the remodeling of the Juvenile Detention Center's kitchen. And they were able to get a grant from the National School Lunch Program, and they're going to help. And that's going to help them buy about 5 different pieces of equipment for the kitchen there. The lowest bidder on this was a company out of New York. They're from Spring Valley. The first thing I thought about was when I read it, of course, it said Spring Valley. I thought, well, gee, Spring Valley, Illinois, but no, it was New York. Culinary Depot was the name of that company, and so they're going to supply the equipment, and the work is going to be done, the installation by a local firm by the name of Rural Mechanical, and so the total project is around $51,000. The budget of the Juvenile Detention Center, they're going to handle the installation.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Salzer? Does the Sheriff's Department get to use the funds from the Maxwell and Plank Road? Or is that just going to general fund?
So specific to this project, it's in JDC.
No, I wasn't talking about JDC. I was talking about the cash rent for the crops.
Oh, cash rent goes into the facilities budget, which is a general fund department.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you again, Phil. Ways and Means?
Okay, thank you. We had one resolution this month, was the traditional monthly delinquent taxes for property transactions, and that was approved unanimously. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Dillon?
Thank you, Chairman. We had just one case, and it was a simple land split of a house from an existing piece of structure in it, or existing property. So passed unanimously out of ZBA and out of our committee too. So we will have a busy December ZBA coming forward, just to forewarn everybody.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. my favorite. Hi, Sharon.
Hey,
See, I just made everybody jealous.
good to see you.
Likewise.
We had no resolutions, but we did have a discussion on the Health and Human Service Campus. Farnsworth Group came in and gave us a report. They met with the Health Department. They met with the coroner as well as the ROE to discuss their needs moving forward on a facility. And so they gave us the recommendation of replace instead of remodeling. So the committee is going to take the next month to get their questions answered, and we're going to look through the report. I'm sure Scott will get this out to all board members to look over, and we'll be discussing that over the next month, and we will have a resolution coming forward in January for us to decide whether we're going to remodel or replace.
Thank you. Any questions for Sharon, Ms. Williams? Seeing none, I'd move to the public safety agenda. Mr. Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
We had 4 resolutions. The first one was from the Sheriff's Department on the appropriation of unanticipated expenses related to COVID-19 pandemic. It's for $95,000. They're going to see if they can reimburse from FEMA. So that was good news. It helped them for that. The second one was Ileas Air Support Vehicle Agreement. We were able to get a 2009, I believe, international truck that does air support, which means filling air cylinders for certain calamities that happen, so forth, where they need to fill the tanks and so forth, and it's not for airplane support. So we've got pictures in our packet. It's a nice looking truck. We just have to keep it up. It's no cost to us. Take care of the insurance and maintenance of it, and in case other areas need it, it'll be available to them if some emergency comes up. The third thing is SFY 22 Redeploy Illinois Planning Grant, and that one is okay. That one's for the. Let me get my head around that. Let me read it. It's been awarded a planning grant from the Illinois Department of Human Services for the amount of $25,000. They used to get this grant and they hadn't for a few years, so they're gonna try it again. And that is with the, Scott, what's the department on that? My mind just went blank on it.
Oh, that's right, Mr. Rosenbaum. So let me get my packet back open up here. So, as you said, it's a program the courts used to participate in. It comes out of court administration, which is where probation is. We have not participated in for a number of years, but there have been some changes to the program that makes it more advantageous to participate. The grant award is $25,000 in revenue. It's split among roughly 10 or so different expense lines, and it would be for FY22. The purpose of the grant is to decrease juvenile incarceration through the creation of evidence-based community programs that maintains public safety and promotes positive outcomes for the youth, which is a statutory requirement. So I think the courts are kind of dipping their toe back into the water to see if this is a grant program now that it's been kind of restructured. It's something that we should continue to start to participate in again or not. This will cover the second half of the state fiscal year, which is the first half of our fiscal year in 22.
Thanks, Scott. And the last one was the state's attorney's appellate prosecutor authorization. That was for $36,000. That's to get money for when criminals or cases are appealed, to help pay, because they always say if they get convicted, they're all appealed, so that'll help cover those costs. That's all we had today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Scott, is that where we pitch into the statewide system, or we're buying access to the statewide system?
State appellate prosecutor is we pitch into the statewide system. As Jenny shared with Mr. Rosenbaum's committee, if we did not allocate that $36,000 and did that work ourselves, the state's attorney has estimated that we would need approximately 3 attorneys dedicated to appellate work only. In wages and benefits alone, that would be in excess of $200,000.
Well, I've maintained a perfect record of never saying that the state is a real bargain, and I'm going to stick by that. But that does look beneficial. Thank you, Mr. Rosenbaum. Any questions for Paul? Seeing none, we just finished finance. You don't have any resolutions. Jim, do you have any comments?
Only a couple bright spots. I would say that we had 2 funds, the risk management being one of them, that were moved. The reserves are adequate now to get them in compliance, and so Julie said there's only one fund that's not, and she thinks the first of the year it will be. The other thing is revenues are coming in much higher than anticipated, so that's a good thing, and expenses are holding their own about where they were expected.
Thank you. Any questions then for the good of the committee? If not, would you like a 5-minute break before we start the regular meeting? Yes, we do have miscellaneous. Do you have a comment, Phil, under miscellaneous? You have the committee's work, right? So it's more than a 5-minute break. Okay, all right. So we would be adjourned.